Before starting, I need to talk directly to you who are true warriors and are tired of seeing people doubting, treating the team as a past and saying it's over. Because today, the Golden State sent such a strong message that changed the climate of the league, and if you have that tightness in your chest thinking, is it still possible to fight? This video is for you. I'll show you what happened, what it reveals about the cast's mentality, and why this news could be exactly the sign the fans needed to believe again. So leave a like, subscribe, and stay with me until the end, because what comes now could become the key to the season. If you want to follow everything about Warriors without missing any updates, do the basics with me now. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and activate the bell, because when any important news comes out, you will be one of the first to know. And comment below quickly, what was the strongest message you think the Golden State sent today? Because now I'm going to show you the detail that many people didn't notice, and it's what explains why this news could change the course of the season. Now let's go to the video. When I say Golden State has drawn a line in the ground, I'm not trying to dramatize for the sake of dramatizing. I'm talking about a real message, one that changes the way the league sees what this squad is today, and most importantly, what it can still be from now on. And I want to talk to you calmly, because this type of news usually becomes just noise on the internet. But when we put the pieces together, it reveals a lot about identity, loyalty, and ambition. The truth is that the season has been a test of patience for those who follow the Warriors closely. You look at the table and see a team at 13-12 ranked 8th in the West, and that alone says a lot. It's not a disaster, but it's also not the portrait of an unquestionable candidate. It's that uncomfortable place where you see potential, see talent, see experience, but still don't feel the consistency of a long sprint, the kind that puts respect back in everyone. And perhaps the hardest part is precisely this feeling of almost. Because in some games, the Warriors are reminiscent of that team that for years dictated the pace of the league. The ball turns, the space appears, the defense fits, and suddenly you think, that's it, it's back. However, at other times, the team falls into fluctuations that make us wonder where the thread that ties everything together is. What is needed to transform flashes into a sequence? What does it take to stop surviving on good nights and start imposing your own game, even when the night is not perfect? If there's one point that you can't argue with, it's what Stephen Curry continues to do. The average of 27.9 points per game is not just a pretty number. It's a warning to anyone who has begun to treat Curry as a closed chapter. He continues to be an absurd offensive engine, and it's not just because of his shooting. It's because of the fear it causes. When Curry steps on the court, defenses already have a changed mental map. He pulls markings from very far away, forces adjustments, opens up space, moves defensive help before the play even begins. This changes the lives of everyone around. And here comes an important point. The Warriors decided to add more intensity and experience to the package, bringing Jimmy Butler into this reality. And when you see 19.5 points and 5.0 assists per game, you understand the immediate impact. Butler has a very unique way of competing. He puts his body forward, puts mental pressure on the opponent, calms the team down in moments when possession is difficult, and has that postseason track record that can't be taught. But even with Curry shining and Butler delivering, there is still this void that appears on specific nights. A missing piece, a fit that has not yet become a habit, a detail that prevents the Warriors from getting into gear once and for all. And when we talk about identity, there's no way around Draymond Green. His averages, 8.0 points, 6.1 rebounds, and 5.5 assists, are almost an invitation to misinterpretation, because that's what Draymond has always been. A player you don't just measure with ordinary statistics. Its value resides in things that don't appear on the spreadsheet. The defensive rotations that prevent an easy layup. The communication that positions a teammate half a second before the opponent's cut. The reading that anticipates the play and breaks the other team's rhythm. And above all, the ability to put the Warriors in the right mood emotionally, especially when the game tries to turn into chaos. That's why this story took on a different weight, because it's not just about a hypothetical trade or a market rumor. It's about how the Warriors see their own hearts. And here the conversation changes level, because behind-the-scenes information has emerged that, honestly, works as an official statement without needing to be an official note. Draymond is seen as practically untouchable. And when I say practically, It's because there is an exception, a single one. One of those very rare situations that make a franchise look at what is sacred and still consider changing it. And this exception, according to what circulated from conversations and reading of the scenario, has a first and last name, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Before you think this is just a fan's daydream, we need to look at the context of the league. Milwaukee is 10-15, a heavy record for a team that, in theory, was built to compete high. And when a team built around a superstar starts to skate, everything becomes an issue. Roster, direction, chemistry, rotation choices, vision of the future. The conversation is not restricted to the court. She invades the locker room, the board, and inevitably the press. At the center of this is Giannis, a two-time MVP who averages 28.9 points, 10.1 rebounds, and 6.1 assists. In other words, he continues to do his part at the highest level, and there is still the physical detail mentioned in the scenario, a strain in the right calf, expected to be out of action for 2 to 4 weeks. This also matters because when a team is unstable, any pause becomes fuel for rumors, anxiety, and speculation about big decisions. And then you start to see the board moving, Knicks appearing as a candidate at some point, and then the idea that there is no longer an exclusive path for anyone. Heat, Spurs, and Lakers being mentioned as possibilities if Milwaukee really gets into serious talks. This type of narrative movement does not happen by accident. When so many destinations are mentioned, the message behind it is usually simple. If a player of that caliber is even on the trade radar, the entire league takes a stand. This is exactly where the Warriors come in a way that draws attention. Because it's not about the Warriors want a star. Almost everyone wants it. What is impressive is the internal logic attributed to the team. There would only be one player in the NBA who would make the Warriors consider trading Draymond. It wouldn't be because of packages, it wouldn't be because of depth, it wouldn't be because of a group of good players, it would be a total transformation, something that justified changing the core that sustained an era. Think with me about what this represents. If this reading is right, the Warriors are indirectly telling the world that they are not in panic mode. It's not in let's dismantle because we're wobbling mode. On the contrary, it is reinforcing that the base is still seen as a reference of identity and that any rupture only happens if the reward is the size of a new era. In other words, Draymond is no ordinary bargaining chip. Only enter into a negotiation if the return is someone who changes the team's level immediately, and then the package discussion appears, which is where things get more concrete. A scenario was mentioned in which names like Jonathan Kuminga and Brandon Podziemski would come in as part of a proposal, and I understand why these names appear. Kuminga has physical tools and potential, and Podziemski has value as a young man who is already showing reading, shooting, and contributing. For a franchise that decides to restructure, this has appeal. You mix the future with some immediate capacity. But there is a crucial detail in this construction. The Warriors could, in theory, try to put together something centered on these young people without putting Draymond on the table. However, the message is that Draymond would only be added if Giannis returned. This nuance is the strong message. She separates negotiating pieces from touching the soul, and the Warriors, from what this reading indicates, would only move their souls to bring in a generational talent. Now, let's talk about basketball itself, because here's the part that makes a lot of people stop and imagine what it would be like on the court. Offensively, Giannis is a problem that few defenses can solve without accepting some type of sacrifice. He attacks the basket with strength, arrives in the painted area with physical presence, finishes with contact, runs in transition as if the game was always fast-paced for him. What's more, it has evolved enough that you can't just close everything and wait for it to be lost. He creates, he finds passes, he punishes inattention. Now imagine Curry marking the perimeter and Giannis attacking a space that is slightly larger because the defense is afraid of the shot. This type of combination is what dismantles systems. Because Curry isn't just a scorer, he's a magnet. And Giannis isn't just a finisher, he's an avalanche. When you combine the two things, you force the opponent to choose which problem they prefer to face. And usually, neither choice is comfortable. And on the other side of the court, the impact would be equally enormous. The Warriors have a defensive identity, they have communication, they have reading, but an elite rim protector with the ability to exchange on the perimeter changes the level of a team. Giannis can contest at the rim, he can see, he can open up space, he can make the rotation that erases a teammate's mistake, and he can even go out to mark someone lighter without becoming an obvious target. In a big game, this is worth its weight in gold. There is also the issue of windows. Giannis's quoted age, 30, puts him firmly at his peak. Curry, even at 36, remains at an elite level. Butler, at 35, brings the kind of experience that transforms playoff games. The idea would not be a desperate movement in the very short term, but rather an attempt to fit together a nucleus with a few real years of fighting instead of an all-or-nothing bet for a few months. But, and here I need to be honest with you, none of this happens without a huge emotional cost. Because Draymond is not just a player on the squad, he is part of what the Warriors have become. He is voice, he is energy, he is history. He was in all 4 titles. It symbolizes an era, and changing a name like that isn't simple, even if the return is someone like Giannis. It affects the fans, it affects the locker room, it affects the sense of continuity. At the same time, there is an argument that always comes up when we talk about winning franchises. Loyalty can also be interpreted as commitment to the chance of winning, and that is the real dilemma. Do you preserve history at any cost? Or do you accept that, at times, the hardest way to honor an era is to try to expand that era, even if it hurts? There is no easy answer. There is choice, and there is the practical part, which is where a lot of speculation tends to break down. First, Giannis did not publicly ask to leave, and until that happens, any conversation is hypothetical. Second, if a player of this level actually enters the market, the queue appears, and it's not a small queue. Third, the financial fit, salary cap rules, and everything that involves a negotiation of this size make the scenario complex. Still, you can understand why this topic grows when the Warriors are mentioned, because the Warriors, historically, are a franchise that attracts, that offers structure, that has a winning culture, that has recognized technical leadership, that has a star with absolute respect in the league. Curry is the kind of presence that influences decisions because he represents an environment in which many players believe they can perform more and compete for the top. And when you add this to the fact that the exchange deadline is approaching, and the deadline of February 5th was mentioned here, you understand why the narratives become more intense. Teams are starting to decide whether they are going to push their chips to compete now or whether they are going to adjust their course so as not to prolong a cycle that is not working. Milwaukee, with a campaign below expectations, becomes a central point in this debate. Now, I return to the main message, because this is what, deep down, changed everything in the way many people are reading the Warriors. The team is not willing to dismantle for the sake of dismantling. He is not accepting proposals that look good on paper, but that do not raise the team's ceiling. The ruler is high. The idea is simple and strong. If the core is to be changed, it has to be through a leap that redefines the championship, not through a patch. And that, in itself, is already a position. It's the Warriors saying that they believe in their DNA, that they value the base, and that they will only give up such a symbolic piece if the exchange is for a force that changes the destiny of the franchise. At a time when many people love to talk about the end of the cycle, this is a response that commands respect, because it is clear. It is not about despair. It's about vision. Now, I really want to listen to you, because this is a discussion that reveals a lot of what each fan values. If a real opportunity presented itself, would you make that trade? Would you put Draymond, Kuminga, and Podziemski in a package for Giannis? Do you think the Warriors would become immediate favorites? Or do you believe that touching the heart of the team brings a risk that not even Giannis's talent is worth? Write your point in the comments, but write it with argument, in your own way, because I will read it to understand how you are seeing this moment. And if you want to continue following these analyses with context, without exaggeration, and without hiding the difficult part of the conversation, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell too, because when this type of news evolves, everything changes very quickly, and I want you to be here with me when the next piece on this board falls. And now I want to close with the question that really matters. After all this, do you still think that the Warriors are just trying to survive? Or did you realize that the message was clear and loud for the entire league? Because when an organization implies that it only touches the heart of the team for a generational talent, this is not an empty rumor. This is positioning. It is ambition. It is a warning that the Golden State will not accept being treated as an extra. So do the following. Comment below. Without beating around the bush, would you make this change, or would you never give up Draymond? I want to see the Dub Nation divided and the arguing, because this discussion will say a lot about what we expect from this season. And if you want to continue following everything, step by step, with the hottest updates, behind the scenes, rumors, and analyses that really connect the dots, click now on the Golden State Warriors News Today playlist in the pinned comment. Go straight there, because the next video talks to this one and there are details that completely change the reading of what could happen. Leave a like to strengthen, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell, because when the next information breaks, I'll be here right away and you'll know before everyone else. Dub Nation, this is getting serious. And from here on, any movement could turn the key for good.